morning, I'm Patty Elhoff, the author of Upcycle with Decoupage, and I'm going to show you how you can make this tray today. The video, though, is more about how you can use your own photographs. You use your inkjet printer to make your copy of your photo that you have on your computer or on your camera or your phone. The inkjet printer is water-based and it will smear. All of the self-serve copiers at any copy store are automatically laser print, and they won't run. You can dip them in water. It's regular paper. You don't have to ask them to change the paper out. You don't have to go to the counter. Make at least 3 copies of what you want to work with, just because you want to have a couple of backups. And here are the supplies we'll be needing for this project. You'll need the wood tray, and when you find this in the craft store, it's just going to be plain wood. Shallow dish of water. For this project, I'm going to be using the Enviro Light Pour-On. It's a little complicated, just a tiny bit complicated to me to use, but if you don't feel comfortable with that, use any top coat that you would like. If you're going to use the pour-on, you'll also want 2 little Dixie cups or plastic cups and a magic marker. Brushes. I use this to paint, which is the other thing. You'll probably want some paint. If you don't want to paint the wood and you want to leave it bare, I would suggest you get some clear gesso. You're going to need a hard brayer, preferably a lint-free cloth. This isn't technically lint-free, but I've washed it 100 times, so it's fine. And I'm going to be using one of these paper cutters. And this is just some dollar store plastic wrap. And last but not least, decoupage glue. Once you've painted or added your clear gesso, I would cut this out to fit inside. This is just a hair too large for this. So once your tray is dry, you're going to want to place decoupage glue all on the inside where you're going to, just where you're going to put the print. If you get it elsewhere like I am doing, don't worry about it. It dries clear. Dip your paper into the shallow dish of water. And we'll just want to blot it. And we're going to lay it face up over where we just placed the decoupage glue, and you'll want to center it. You may be working with a collage, in which case you will have several different photos and you'll want to do a dry run before you place the decoupage glue down. So I have this centered pretty well. This is why I take the plastic wrap. Your fingers can actually rip the paper that you're working on. You don't want to do that. So take a piece of plastic wrap and rub over this so that there are no air bubbles. Or you just want to make sure, right now it's a preliminary press down, just make sure everything's in place. Then we take the brayer and from the center out, go all around your image. This will push any air bubbles, glue clumps, anything like that out. Now, just for the purpose of this video, I'm keeping this rather plain. It's just my copy decoupaged inside, but I wanted to give you a few other ideas. You can always make some copies of maps, and this is a map of Paris just because it's got all of these unusual names and places on it. Or if you'd like, if you don't like these edges at all around here, you can cut some of your extra copies paper and just extend it out a little bit more. This is a picture of a butterfly I took, and I might just add something like this or other pictures that I had taken, made into laser prints. And the next step after this is dried is you want to add at least 2 more coats, and 2 more coats is fine, of decoupage glue. Let it dry between each coat, and I can't stress this enough, that decoupage glue has to be completely dry before we put this high gloss finish on here, the pour on. Now I'm applying this 3rd coat of decoupage glue, and I'm trying to keep the brush movements going in the same direction. And what I'm also doing is applying the decoupage glue all over the rest of the box, because that is going to work as a sealant on the paint. And we'll let this dry and then come back to the final step. Now that this is completely dry, I am going to put the 2-part resin on, which is the pour on. A plastic fork works really well to mix this, and you'll notice there are millions of bubbles in here. Let's see if you can see this. And we're going to pour this on to our surface. Now, you can see I'm pouring it down the center, and that's because I know this is going to level out. You want to have the box handy. I'm sorry I didn't say that in the earlier description of what you need. I don't think I mentioned the plastic fork either, although anything works to stir this. But as soon as we're done with this step, we want to put it in the box, and this has to dry for at least 12 hours. It may take a little longer. So I've just poured as much as I'm going to get out of this cup, I think, onto here. Now you can use a brush to spread it around, or whatever you have. You can also just tip this, but it is quite thick and it starts to set up quickly. Now you can see that it's dripping down, which is what we want. We want to get it to all the corners and points. If you drip any over to a side, wipe that off as soon as possible. Now you can still see there's a lot of air bubbles in there. That's normal, and I'll tell you how we're going to fix that in a second. If you do use a brush to move this around, a sponge brush is fine. But just know that you can't clean this off. Once you use the sponge brush, you're done. With that brush, you'll have to throw it out. Now, I probably could have used a little bit more than the amount I have here. Or it may be just the right amount. It's really hard to gauge with this, actually. Now the brighter the light, the better, because you can see if there's any spots that you missed. And right now, you see how there are brush marks in there? That will level right out while this is wet. But that's a trick. You really want to work with this pretty quickly, because it does start to get too solid, maybe in about 5 or 7 minutes. So for now, let's just move it all over. I can feel there's a lot more in the center here, and I want to move that out to these edges. If you have any air bubbles, and a lot of them start to pop as you're moving the pour-on around, because you really would rather not have any air bubbles in here once this dries, and they will dry in there. Now you want to lay this as flat as possible, and the reason that we will put it in a box is because this works like a dust and hair magnet. So while I'm going to put this away for tonight and I'm going to let it dry, I'm going to put it in a room where no one is in. It's not good to breathe a lot of this, even though it doesn't have an odor really. I'm going to put it in a bathroom with the door shut and the heat on, and it'll cure perfectly overnight. If you have any drips, just look around in very, very bright light and remove any of those drips. If you get this on your fingers, by the way, it's really sticky now, you can use nail polish remover and that'll take it off. And here's our project for today. I just took it out of the box. I let it dry or cure overnight. Now you can see that really high gloss on there. It's like there are a few, I'm not sure what that is, if it's in an air bubble or what have you. Sometimes that can happen, but for the most part, I'm very happy with this. If you've got any questions about this, feel free to ask me in the comments section. And as always, thank you for subscribing, and I hope I've been able to inspire you guys and at the very least help you out. And take it easy. I'll see you next week.